Over the past 25 years, Vista helped bring enterprise software to the cloud, and now, of course, it's working on implementing the transition to artificial intelligence. You might also, by the way, recognize Robert from a viral moment in 2019 when he repaid the student loans of 400 graduating students from Morehouse College. He's a dedicated philanthropist and the author of several books, including his most recent Lead Boldly, 7 Principles from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Robert F. Smith is joining me right now at Invest. Thanks for being here.
Great to be here. Great to see you.
I got to start with the theme of the day, the theme of the year, the past couple of years, which has been AI, right? And generative AI in particular. And I'll get to investing in AI, which you've been doing a lot of, but I do want to start with AI in the workforce because, as I'm sure you're aware, the Financial Times reported that Vista's told investors that you plan to cut your workforce, in part because of what's going on with AI, potentially by as much as a third. What can you, I mean, we've been hearing this from a lot of companies, Robert.
Yeah.
So it's not perhaps as shocking as it might have been recently, but what can you tell us about the plan?
Yeah, like all things, there's a fair amount of misstatement in what was reported. But with all that being said, Gen AI and ultimately agentic solutions create massive productivity. You know, we have over the last 25 years at Vista really embraced technological change in how we transform our portfolio companies and of course Vista in and of itself. You know, we've gone through multiple waves of the digitization of everything in many cases, and you think about the distribution first of compute, the Internet of Things, mobile first, cloud, and now we have a new technology, artificial intelligence, utilized through Gen AI and of course agentic solution sets. What we are finding is a massive amount of productivity that comes, not surprisingly, from all aspects of what this technology distributes off the infrastructure that we are managing. If you think about productivity and product development and customer service, customer support, go-to-market, all those dynamics, we're seeing massive productivity. We are built for growth as a firm. We're going to continue to grow. What's interesting is as you grow, you can actually grow without adding as many people, which is the way you actually have to think about this. Now, in certain instances, there are going to be certain categories of jobs that become very much affected by artificial intelligence and Gen AI. Other categories become very much more enabled by that. And so it's a balance of expression and expansion as you get these systems to actually operate at scale with capacity. And part of what we've been leaning forward in doing with all of our portfolio companies is we've built out now an agentic factory. We have some fantastic partners. We're now able to take the architecture of these workflow systems called enterprise software, the unique data sets, which less than 1% of the data in enterprises actually exist in these foundational models, and actually create agentic solutions that create highly efficient dynamics in operating through these existing workflows. That's a unique aspect that enterprise software companies can actually embrace. The value of incumbency is really going to matter in certain of these industries. So that productivity will actually absolutely make its way through the overall economy and of course private equity firms ultimately. Right. We have unique workflows in private equity firms that we can actually leverage these solutions.
Okay, so what did that story get wrong then? I mean, because all of that would indicate that you're pushing towards a leaner workforce potentially, or as you say, maybe deployed in different ways.
Yeah.
So what did it get wrong?
We are not reducing our staff by 30% or whatever the number was. I don't know where they got that from.
Are you planning to slow hiring as a result of all of this?
In certain areas, yeah, for sure. But you know, when I look at the work that we do in our private equity business, our credit business, our value creation business, massive amount of opportunity, and here's why. You know, if you think about the waves of how technology have played out in over decades, you know, the first wave, of course, is typically I call it the hardware providers capture the vast majority of the economic benefit. Second wave typically are what I call the service providers, infrastructure providers, in this case, hyperscalers capture that benefit. And you're seeing that play out. It is the enterprise software vendors ultimately that if you have, I call it sovereignty, dominion over workflows and data sets that have the ability to take this agentic solution sets and capture massive amounts of economic rent opportunities. It expands their TAM dramatically. One of our companies, one of our first companies that went through our AI factory, our agentic factory, it now has expanded a market now 10x what they had before. Now the way I like to say it, Gen AI will enable enterprise software to eat services. Okay, it will create a massive amount of efficiency in the work that it does and workflows, and we are now installing these systems real time across literally hundreds of customers, and it's non-trivial work. But as you do the installations, we're actually starting to see the benefits of it. Of course, we're taking those same sort of systems, and we have been within Vista and saying, okay, what are the areas within a private equity firm that we can leverage so that our people can become more productive, they can expand their area of their TAM of opportunity. And the good news is the enterprise software market right now has a disproportionate valuation relative to, call it, the AI groups. That as you make these agentic and AI enabled, I think these businesses are going to create massive upside and opportunity for our investors. That's what we're focused on.
So there's so many threads to pull on in there. I guess I'll start with the valuation question first. Do you think that publicly traded AI is in a bubble?
So it's an interesting question in that, you have to build out infrastructure. And again, being a student of history around as an investor, you have to be. It took massive amounts of capital to build out the infrastructure that we benefit from now. You remember the global crossings of the world, building out cable and fiber. And okay, now some of those companies went bust. It was in a bubble. Some of those companies ended up being the winners because they built at the right time, right capacity, and the needs and demands of what the market.
Although in some cases they took
demand of
decades to come back
in some cases.
Stock prices.
Absolutely. So those are the dynamics. Everyone we're putting trillions of dollars into an infrastructure that is a question of, do you have enough power to support it? And you argue, is there a bubble because you can't support it with the power? There's an argument around that. Are there enough component parts? Is there enough distribution? Are those component parts that we are looking at today going to actually give the power demands that are required? We're hearing, of course, there are other solution sets that have lower power by a tenth of what we're seeing. So do you need the same sort of power? So all of those are market dynamics that have to reach certain points of equilibrium over time. Where we focus, again, all of that provides infrastructure for enterprise software. At the end of the day, what we're going to be doing is utilizing inference. You can put it in the form of tokens, utilizing inference to create massive economic rent and productivity for our customers. That will all inure to the benefit of those enterprise software vendors who become agentic. So there are going to be ebbs and flows over who is actually capturing what value at what period of time. Certain folks will have monopolistic positions for short periods of time, and then others will come up with, like an all silicon, different solution sets that will be lower cost, suit to purpose, different infrastructure. Do you have to have it all centralized? Can you do it at the edge? In terms of the inference capabilities, do you need 1 gigawatt power supply, or do you need 50 megawatt to do certain inference for certain use case applications? And is that more suitable for that use case application? So we're going to go through those waves, and some parts of this market are in bubbles, and other parts are very much in a great investable space.
Do you think that power is going to be the main constraint on the build out of AI in the shorter term?
In the short term in the US, yes. I think in other parts of the global economy, they have an excess of power, relatively speaking. The question is, can they utilize that power to actually power Gen AI or agentic or data systems or GPU data centers in a way that is accessible and usable for those who need it? So again, there's not only the power dynamic, there's accessibility, what are the requirements of latency, and what are the size of the models for the use case and application. Not every model needs a massive LLM. Some will be able to use some small language model in an environment to deliver a high capacity solution for that particular industry. So again, it's early, it's a lot, but it has massive implications and massive productivity. So we're excited to be a part of what I call the edge of this thing, which ultimately is the enterprise software will capture benefits. We built these businesses now. We're converting. I think we have 18 of our companies now that already have agentic solutions in the market that are getting installed or have been installed and seeing real results. And I am just really excited. I've never been more excited about investing in enterprise software than I am today.
And you're probably fortunate to be on the private side of the space right now, perhaps. I was taking a look at some of the returns in the public markets. Because when we talk about AI in a bubble, we're mostly not talking about enterprise software companies, right? So I was like, HubSpot, Atlassian, Salesforce, all of them have been hammered this year. All of them are down pretty sharply this year. And the perception in some of these cases is that Gen AI is going to replace rather than augment. So do you think that is a risk? Is it a risk for any of your businesses? I mean, it sounds like you said you're very excited about the opportunity.
Very excited.
At the same time, what's the risk?
Yeah, I've stated to our investors, it's an enterprise software, I believe, ends up in 3 states. There is agentic, rule of 70, and no right to exist. Okay, so certain public investors can't necessarily discern between those 3 categories just yet, because they're not seeing enough of the proof points of, okay, is an agentic enterprise software business, does that create massive growth and massive opportunity? And if they aren't agentic, do they have a right to exist? Do they actually have, the way I like to think about it is sovereignty and dominion over workflows and data sets that are unique. Less than 1% of enterprise data actually exists in these large scale models. So if you actually have that capability, incumbency matters. And if you build agentic solutions around the workflows, that matters. If you don't have that as an existing construct, there's going to be some challenges and some problems. Who actually has the proprietary access to the workflows? And are those workflows designed in a way that you have to do certain things that you can't do in an agentic world or in a open world that says, hey, listen, we need regulatory compliance, we need all these sort of aspects that create an agentic workflow within those environments. If you do that well, you have a right not only to exist, but to thrive and to actually expand what is your addressable market. If you haven't done certain of those aspects in building out your infrastructure and having, again, the sovereignty and dominion of the workflows and data sets, you may not have a right to exist. But that doesn't mean you can't use these Gen AI solutions to lower your cost of your delivery dramatically. That's what I call that rule of 60, rule of 70. Increase your profit margins because you're actually able to lower the cost of development and customer support and go to market, all those sorts of things, and deliver solution sets at a higher profit, which give you the ability to return capital to your investors. That hasn't played out yet at size and at scale in the public markets, which is why public investors are still trying to sort all that out.
I'm also curious about sort of deals and exits in that environment right now, because you've done a lot of big deals over the past several years. We have seen more IPOs coming in this market, some AI, but particularly in crypto. So what do you think that environment is going to be like over the next year? Do you think you're going to get some more exits for your investors?
Yeah, we're excited. I mean, even in this last year, we've been able to return a little over $12 billion, which has been exciting. And none of them have been through IPOs, right? So if you think about it, even with the IPO window and market being closed, we have been able to build businesses that strategic buyers have been excited about buying, financial buyers have now been excited about buying, and positioning those businesses so people understand they have an agentic aspect to them, or they're a rule of 70, and have the capacity to deliver over the long-term returns to the buyers of those sorts of businesses. That's essential to our business. Our business is to buy, create value. All this operational intelligence that we bring in our best practices is an important part of what we do as investors in enterprise software. With all of that said, now that the IPO market is starting to open, we have a couple of companies in registration, and we're excited about the prospects of what they can lead to in the marketplace. So again, like all things, these markets go through different equilibrium states, and we're excited about the fact that now public investors are now saying, listen, we are now in demand of companies that actually have the ability to sustain growth and market share and market opportunity in very specific enterprise software areas, and we are fortunate to have companies that fit in those spaces.
Yeah, I want to get back to the labor question a little bit, sure. Because we keep seeing pretty dismal both anecdata and data about Gen Z and then Gen Alpha in this job market, that it's tough for them to get jobs.
Yeah.
What skills do these people need in the age of AI, especially as you talk about the shifting of the job market?
Yeah.
What do they need to know?
There's going to be a little more of what we call the whole brain type of skill, right? My generation, part of our generation, you could be really a STEM person, and as a result of that, there was a premium on being able to process data and come up with insights and analytics around that data. And now you have this new tool and a set of agents that can actually do that much more efficiently, much more quickly, and serve you, in essence, the synthesis of the data based on what it is you're looking for. And now what do you do with that? And so those who get actually a little bit more whole brain, creative, thoughtful, understanding the ecosystem, the EQ of intelligence, of engagement. I mean, look at our sales agents, for instance. For a period of time, most people think salespeople are selling all the time. And when you talk to them, they'll tell you that. Well, if you actually look at the data, they're only selling about 15% of the time. a lot of the time they're doing things from, putting up sales notes and, putting strategies together, all those sorts of things. Think about using a series of agents that prepare your salespeople to be more effective. So rather than them taking, hours to do, sales prep, it takes minutes. It's delivered at the time they're walking into the meeting. And now they can focus on, I call it the human aspects of what is it that solves the problem, the relationship that they need. Those are the things that are going to create massive productivity. So there's going to be some shakeout in those parts of the market. Do you need as much of the kind of the sales prep dynamics that we do today, which were often entry-level type jobs, right? But if you have the ability to also orchestrate agents to deliver that, you can actually now effectively treat and deliver to more salespeople that capability. So that's how this is all going to evolve in many of these instances.
An issue we've talked about before also when you talk about building out your workforce, as you well know, there's been a backlash against policies that aim at fostering diversity, equity, and inclusion. So when you think about recruiting, whether it's for Vista itself or for the portfolio companies, is there still a place for DEI in this environment? Is there still a business case for DEI?
The business case hasn't changed. It is, everyone knows the more diverse thought that you have, the lower risk, the higher returns, the data is all out there. Now, how people react to it, that's, a different instance, but the data is there. I tell our teams constantly, keep doing what you're doing, hire the best people, enable them to be effective, ensure that they have the ability to create the connectivity. In America in particular, we have to embrace the resources that we have at our disposal. The thing that we have done over the last 20, 30, 40 years is distribute capability globally, digital capability globally. So a lot of the things that always kept us on the leading edge, now are accessible everywhere. So as an economy, if you look about the US economy, you have to actualize as many people as possible using the tools that are available so that we can be the most productive workforce and deliver the most productivity per person, per country that we can in order to compete as a small country on a number of people basis relative to others. That's why for us it's important to deliver solutions that teach students. We have partnerships with some of them HBCUs where we deliver AI systems and curriculum to Morehouse and Spelman and now to other HBCUs. Our partnerships with code.org, we'll get to over 5 million students who are not only just teaching them code, but now it's AI-centric coding, all those sorts of things. We have to equip that K through 12 and then higher ed groups of students to understand this is the new paradigm of how work's going to be done. You need to embrace it. You need to become a master of how it is utilized and understand how to scale it, not just in corporations, but also in starting businesses, encouraging people to actually use the unique insights they have as entrepreneurs from the communities that they come with to develop businesses and expand those businesses at a much more rapid pace using these technologies and these platforms. That's where the opportunity set really lies for us.
Robert, as I mentioned, you have written a number of books, and the latest book highlights speeches from Martin Luther King Jr., but sort of through the lens, and you add some commentary on your own experiences and reflections. And I'm curious whether you think at this current moment in this country, there's been backsliding in terms of racial equity in America, whether we're talking about politics or culture or business.
Yeah, to me, we have to embrace the assets that we have, and that's our people. Our greatest asset in this country are our people. We need to enable and actualize our people, and part of that means we have to build stronger alliedship around what are the areas that we need to address.
Are we doing that?
In some communities I see yes, in some communities not so much. Some communities are moving forward and some communities are moving backwards. But we have to create enough of a momentum moving forward, because moving backward is not going to be an option in the rate and pace of change in the global economy. For periods of time where you had disproportionate access to technology and resources, you could operate in certain ways. The world has become flat in many respects in that regard. Look, the U.S. has been a beneficiary of it because we reap the benefits of the products and solutions that we've been able to sell globally. But now people have access to that. So we now have to actualize, I call it, every able-bodied American to participate in the opportunity and enable them to actually create GDP, create access to additional jobs and expansion. That's ultimately what keeps us on the front foot of prosperity. That's what's important.
Robert, finally, obviously, you're a busy guy. You're raising money. You're writing books. What do you do in order to try and shut off a little bit and rejuvenate?
That's a great question. I just actually went on a wonderful trip with one of my sons. And we went fishing for 3 days, and then he got me on some roller coasters for a couple of days, which was a lot of fun. But a lot of it is connecting with people that you care about. To me, it's listening to great music, listening to the thoughts of the youth, what it is that they're interested in, and gaining perspective as to where you should focus your time, energy, and attention. And when people ask, well, how do you spend that incremental moment? It's usually listening to music and trying to plan a fly fishing trip with one of my children.
That's the second fishing answer I think we've gotten today. What kind of music are you listening to?
Right now, John Batiste is my guy. Oh, he's just amazing.
Love it.
I think he will go down as the greatest musician of his generation. So I'm excited to participate with him in that venture.
You and I are on the same page.
Outstanding.
On that one. Thank you so much,
Julie.
Robert. I
Good to see
really
you.
appreciate it. Great to see you.